Hey there, it's Lauri. Before we get the show started, I wanted to say thank you to everyone who's already left comments and ratings and shared my content with others. It is one of the best ways I can reach other people that could use my help. So thank you very much. If you have yet to do that, I highly encourage you to leave a comment and a rating, whether it's where you're listening to my shows or watching my shows on YouTube. Leaving a like, leaving a comment resets the algorithm that I don't love feeding, but I must, so that I can do my work for whomever is meant to hear my messages and learn to understand themselves from the inside out. I've rolled out a refresh of my website. I'd love you to head over to www.customdesignedwellness.com and check it out. There are ways to sign up for free chats, and I have a brand new energetic assessment you can also take for free that will give you a bird's eye view of how you're made on the inside, what makes you tick, and what makes you ticked off. So head over to www.customdesignwellness.com to get yours, sign up for my newsletter, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Lauri Stern. Join me as I invite experts and friends to discuss a range of topics, from the factual and practical to the mystical and magical. Consider this your virtual happy hour filled with lively, authentic, and meaningful conversations meant to inform, inspire, and ignite your curiosity. Whether you are very real or super woo, this podcast is just for you. Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Lauri Stern, and today I want to talk about parenting. Because this time of year, we're approaching May, and May is tough for a lot of parents, especially if you have multiple kids. And I'm going to link in the show notes a piece of writing I did. I refer to May as cray amazing. And it took me a while to get there. It just used to be crazy and aggravating. So it was like maggravating. And it was one of those moments as a parent. I was in the carpool line waiting for my kids to come out of grade school, and they had to go to their various activities after school. I had snacks in the car, and I think this was the day I also had to get to like the middle school or the high school at the same time. And I was pissed, rushing around, all the things, barely having time to ask my kids how their day was before I threw the snacks in the back seat, drove, and now I'm cussing because that's what I do when I drive at the drivers in front of me. They're going too slow because I have to get to where I'm going. And I think I was at a red light and I took a look at myself in the mirror and I didn't recognize myself at all. I was this pissed off, angry, resentful mom. And it made me want to cry and beat myself up, frankly, because I've got these treasures of my children in the backseat being themselves, excited to go where they want to go. And I show up pissed off and angry because I'm pretty much just a chauffeur at this point in their lives. Chief cook, bottle washer, driver, scheduler, lunch maker, filling out all the forms. And I kind of stopped in that moment. I looked like a monster. I felt like a monster. And I thought, why the F am I so angry and resentful for a life I willingly and lovingly signed up for, and the life of my dreams, frankly, that I get to live every day? And we get stuck there. And I know you hear me because we've all been there. Life makes us pedal like crazy, going to and from all the things. And we forget there's moments where we can coast. And for sure, we feel like, and we know that there aren't those moments. We really do have to do a lot of heavy lifting and schlepping and scheduling and organizing and all that stuff that makes us feel like we're hyperventilating. We're doing a job because parenting is a job. And even when we have the opportunities to coast, we kind of forget how, or we think that we're wasting time because we're so used to pedaling. And May is the time of year when a lot of you, a lot of us may catch ourselves in those places of anger and annoyance, rigidity, and just frankly not really loving the lives that we've designed and signed up for. And so, what do we do with that? Well, we could stay in self judgment and anger. We could remain in resentment, placing our emotions onto our kids or our husbands, in my case, wives, if you're a man listening to this, or partners of the same sex, whoever you are. But in other words, we place our discomfort, because who wants to feel uncomfortable, onto others. It's easier instead of shining that rear view mirror like I did that day onto yourself. Why am I this person? How have I become this person? And how can I change being this unhappy person or resentful person? I used to love this life. I used to be in joy. And if you look at parenting like a job, we all love our jobs from time to time and we hate our jobs from time to time. So, getting real about, I think we get afraid to admit that, like I said, parenting is a job because no one's allowed to complain about it, right? We know having children is a miracle. And there's a lot of people that are having difficulty having children. So when I complain about my kids, sometimes I feel even more guilty because I know there's people that can't have them. Okay. But that doesn't do me any favors either, misplacing my guilt or shoving it down because I know other people have a different situation. When I'm putting myself above those people, and I'm not saying that in an egotistical way. We conflate too much compassion with putting ourselves on a pedestal or saying, oh, thank God that's not me. Both of those, the pedestal and the thank goodness that's not me, aren't truly demonstrations of compassion. They are a different version of victimhood, frankly, and fear. And so we really just need to take a good hard look at those messages that are running in our head. Of course, we're allowed to feel lucky that we had it easier than some people or we live a different way than some people, but we have to be careful about when we, have that gratitude that we're not stepping on the bad luck of others in order to have more gratitude, if that makes sense. And so, again, just getting really real about our emotions. And I was talking about at a regular job, we feel every right and have no problem bitching about our boss or coworkers, but yet we have a lot of problems bitching about our coworkers, which are our family members, and our boss, which is ourselves or your partner. So, giving ourselves permission to have real reactions and real conversations with ourselves and with the other people in our life is a big deal. The day I looked at myself in the mirror, I could have, and I wish I did because I have later on, told my kids, I'm not angry at them. I'm just having a bad day. Or I'm feeling rushed and I'm sorry that I'm not my best self, right? I was short. I wasn't probably even smiling. My kids are really hilarious. They always give me something to smile about. That day, I was really in the shitter, just feeling all the ways that people do, doing all the things that mothers do. So having that conversation in a way that, depending on the age of your kids, can hear you admit you're human is basically what's happening. You're allowed to be human in front of your kids and take that extra step of reassuring them that you're displaying these human emotions, especially anger, because that can be scary. Just any sort of discomfort, just sometimes we don't even know why. And this is big too, especially raising daughters, the hormones of getting your period and stuff. I remember being their age, junior high and high school, and just crying at the drop of a hat and not really knowing why, just crying. And when they were going through it, so clearly I remembered those moments and I had wished someone had said to me instead of, what are you crying about? Or don't be so wimpy or whatever. Didn't happen all the time, but it happened. If someone had said to me, you don't have to identify why you're sad, just be sad, that would have been great, right? So if we can just remember, we don't have to always label the why, but we can experience the emotion without having to fix it right away or identify it right away, because sometimes that activity is just like brushing it under the carpet. It's not going to go away, but we think it does. So being okay with not being okay and being okay with being human, especially as a parent, is really what I'm after here. Because, and this is no exception, it happened at this meeting I was at today. One of the worst things I have heard in my adult life is you are only as happy as your least happy kid. And I can't tell you how many times I hear it. I hear it from my clients, I see it online, and I will comment. And maybe some of you have seen the comment. If you are only as happy as your least happy kid, you are not living your life, you are living theirs. Okay, so before you scream at me, let's talk about how we were raised to define what is a good parent. And a lot of us were raised that good parents, especially mothers, put aside their hopes, dreams, wishes, passions, hobbies for the sake of raising a family or being a wife. Or we're told good moms do this and bad moms do that. Good moms get right into the emotions with their kids and are as upset and afraid and pulled down by the weight of whatever is happening because their child is going through something. That's not, in my definition, what I know through my lived experience and my professional experience, a sustainable way to parent, because it puts you in their world. And that does two things. It doesn't allow you to stand in your sovereignty and your empowerment. You can be upset and be afraid and want to help your child, and you will. But your child needs you to be the adult. Your child doesn't need you to get into the mud with them. They're dealing with it. They need you, or they need you to be the lifeguard, right? If you're the lifeguard and you jump in without the life preserver, which is pretty much what you do when you're only as happy as your least happy kid, now you're both going to drown. Okay. You as the parent need to understand your child is going through it, but they don't want the responsibility of taking you down with them. They can see it in your face. They can hear it in your voice. And I know you guys, I know you think being a good mom means being upset with your kid and for your kid. And that's true to a point, but you need to be able to step out and get a bigger picture of your role as leader of your family, because that's what mothers and fathers are. They are leaders of the family, of your biggest and most important family business. I'll get to that in a second. So, if you're in that frame of mind, please let me help you, because when your kids leave the house, and hopefully they will, you want to raise them to have the wings and the roots and the whole thing. If you have been living vicariously through every experience of your child, every goal is your goal, every A is your A, every heartbreak is your heartbreak, everything they're experiencing that you define as your worth, then when that label of being a mother in that way, raising kids in the home, is taken away, you completely lose your mind and you're untethered, because you walk around saying, if I'm not that person, who am I now? So if the one thing I can impart on, especially you young mommies out there, because I've been you and now I'm an older mommy, going through the carpool, doing all the forms, getting all upset because your kid can't get into the class after school that you wanted because other moms lined up before you because you were at somebody else's sports game and you couldn't get there. Or guess what? You couldn't sign up for your tennis class because you didn't want to get up at 5:30 in the morning because you had to drive your kid at 6 a.m. to the early bird for driver's ed. Okay. So the way we have to sign up for stuff is so ridiculous anyway. And who the fuck decided we have to sign up for camp the minute camp ends? Like, can we just take a break? Can we just coast? But life apparently is not designed that way. So we have to take those moments for ourselves to coast. A. B. It's okay if they don't get into the class. Are you upset? Yeah. Is their life going to be broken? They might feel that way. And you might feel that way because let's be honest, when your child is busy, you get to have your fun, right? So let's talk about something else that parents go through while I'm at it, and not just in May, but any time. Let's rip off the band aid and rip up the carpeting on the dirty underbelly of my kid's sick. Oh my fucking God. What happened? Raise your hand if you've been there. You're just about to leave for your yoga class, or I'm a teacher. I'm just about to leave to teach a class, and your kid throws up. Now what? Well, some of us are going to get really pissed off because you're looking forward to that time off. You deserve it, of course. And, you know, now you're thrown off your schedule. That's an ugly truth. Your first reaction, coulda, woulda, shoulda. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry you threw up. And hopefully you said that. But soon after, you're like, now what am I going to do? I got to get a sub. If they can find it, the class has to get canceled. So there's responsibilities, obviously. You can't go to work because your child is sick. And those are real realities. What I'm talking about is the other stuff that I kind of mentioned where your child's sick and you never realized how selfish you were until that happened because you're like, oh my God, I'm an evil person. Why am I so pissed I can't play tennis? Versus, wow, now I get to watch Star Wars all day with my kids, which is what I used to do. So just the reframing, and how we're able to pivot or not on a dime has a lot to do with how we handle the unexpected realities of parenting. Because guess what? There is no better teacher than how to deal with the unexpected than becoming a parent. Will we get pregnant? Will my pregnancy be easy? I didn't have easy pregnancies. I lost a set of twins before I gave birth to my firstborn because I had an incompetent cervix. And so I didn't know that I had an incompetent cervix. And I had to deliver a set of twins at 18 weeks because they weren't going to survive in the environment that I was creating for them. And so I had to be on bed rest the entire rest of each of my pregnancies. And we had to hire nannies to help me out with the other kids while I was on bed rest and my husband was at work. And then he would come home and help, of course. But there was a reframe in my mind from the get go. My body betrayed me. There was a whole conversation about that and healing that had to be done about that. um, I thought pregnancy was going to be one way. I thought I was going to have births the natural way, and I had to have C-section for every single one of my pregnancies. And so that alone taught me a lot of lessons. The labeling for sure. I was on bed rest, so nobody really saw me be pregnant. And I had all these images in my head of waddling down the sidewalk with a big old belly and people noticing I was pregnant. So for my first pregnancy, I really didn't have that. And I started to recognize how I started defining myself, not only because I had to quit my job, but then once I was on bed rest, like, who am I now without this job? So all this stuff started coming up even before I started the work that I do now. So I was grateful for those internal dialogues I was able to have. And just even the way, like I said, I wanted to have birth. I was reading books about the Bradley method, and I didn't want an epidural. I didn't want surgery, but life gives us what we need, really. Might not be what we want in the moment, but looking back, I can see why it worked out that way because I'm able to come on here and talk about it didn't work out the way I thought. And I don't think a lot of us are talking about that admission. The rigidity, Disney princess rigidity of Prince Charming's going to come on a white horse, or, we're going to be asleep and somebody's going to kiss us and wake up and we're happily ever after. I'm going to have easy pregnancies. I'm going to have no trouble getting pregnant. I'm going to be able to afford my kids, all that stuff. And so, again, parenting is one of the biggest teachers if we allow it to be, and we allow ourselves to experience all of the parts of ourselves that come up and get triggered and revealed through the process of being a parent. So, yeah, so I didn't have it easy. And I'm sorry for those of you out there who also don't have it easy or didn't have it easy. And I guess that's all I can say about that. But I'm with you. I see you. It's just the most fun and the most scary time in our lives, the highs and lows and the ups and downs. And so I just want to let the mommies out there know, and the daddies, but the mommies for sure want to have conversations with your kids. They want to hear from you as a human. They don't want you to be pretending they can't handle something. And of course, how you say what you're going to say or need to say to them might need to be nuanced and watered down depending on their age. And if you've made a mistake and have been all over your human self and kind of shit all over your kids and cried on their shoulder and freaked them out because you really were having a moment and you needed a therapist, but your kid was there, you can go back and apologize for that too and have a conversation. Hey, did that bother you when I did that? And I'm really sorry if you were scared. Being able to go back and ask your kids, hey, was there ever a time you were afraid of me? Is there ever a time you were scared to ask me a question? Was there ever a time I shut you down for any reason? And just getting really clear, especially before they leave the house and have kids of their own, having some of those conversations are so transformative and important so that when your kids want to have kids of their own, they're not running default programming that they're not aware of either, the way I know I was and still do sometimes, and the way we all can. So, May, graduations, matriculations, the ending of school, the beginning of summer. Some kids go to camp, some kids don't. The end of summer, now the start to school. So, how do we navigate those transitions? Well, for me, and I'm sure for you, you notice that right before the end of school, let's say, no matter how old your child is, they wig out. They start getting a little like they misbehave or they forget to do the homework or they become completely disorganized or they become really organized. They know a change is coming. Like I'm talking about little kids at preschool. I remember my kids just kind of just wigging out. And then I realized they're getting afraid of the change. They can't really maybe identify it or have the words to articulate it, but they know a change is coming. And so do you, right? And so what that taught me at that time, and again, our kids are our greatest teachers if we allow them to be. What that taught me as a parent is to recognize, and again, it's like the lifeguard image. When our kids are misbehaving because they're in fear of the unknown, really, which is what's happening, they know school's ending, they're going to miss their teachers and their friends, and what's going to happen for this period of time before their next activity or they go to camp. And then they're afraid in that way for all the good reasons, but also real reasons of are they going to make friends? Are they going to like camp? Blah, blah, blah. What that taught me was that our kids crave structure. So they're mourning the loss or fearing the loss of a defined parameter of their day. And that doesn't mean that we need to keep them on that schedule. In fact, those of you who know me well, I only sent my kids to camp for 4 weeks. I only went to camp for 4 weeks. And I really think there's value in the unscheduling because that's when your kid gets to learn, and so do you. What really lights them up? What really makes them happy? How much downtime do they really need or want? And permission to take the downtime because we're all pedaling, not just us, but they are too, especially during a school year. And as they get older, it doesn't get any easier. So giving them time to chill out and figure out what to do with unstructured time is such a good tool as they get older and as their schedules change. But for you as a parent, especially as a mom, and especially for those sending your child to college for the first time or the last time, checking in with yourself on how you're feeling with that change and that transition and noticing, where and why are you in fear? Is it fear of their unknown or fear of your unknown or both? And fear of, especially middle school to high school, or actually, let me backtrack. It was far worse between grade school and middle school. And I've talked about this. Junior high sucks ass, okay? It can also be amazing. But my experience, personally, I love school all the time. Every stage, every age, I love school. Love, love, love. For my kids, on the parent side of it, boy, oh boy, first time I ever experienced the social engineering of the moms who grabbed the buzz books from the feeder grade schools and organized groups before the bell even rang on that first day. They knew who their kids were going to be friends with. They assumed and knew who they were going to be friends with. And there was no room for anybody else as long as their kid had a pack. My mouth still drops open. I still am so amazed that this still happens, by the way. And I'm just going to be mean for a second. What fucking fools? Because what happens to those groups? They explode, don't they? Didn't they? Yes, they did. And yes, they do. And it's not that I found joy in it, although at the time when I wasn't so evolved, I guess, as I am now, but I'm still human. I was so happy because those moms who did that did their kids a disservice for sure. A, it showed that they don't trust their children for making their own friends, and B, that they don't trust their kids will have quality friends. That's really what it came down to, is these moms grabbed these books and decided, these are the popular kids. I want my kids to be in the popular group as I've defined it, and let's go. We're making the group, and that's that. And like a group of 16 boys and girls are not going to last, especially all the way through middle school. And then it becomes difficult. And I know there's lots of podcasts, Dear Nina's one of them, about how adult women especially navigate adult friendships. One of the biggest bust ups of adult friendships is when your kids who used to be friends are now no longer friends. Now, what do you do as adults? Are you allowed to still be friends or not? Do you blame this child for being mean to your child? So now you're not going to talk to that mom. So there's a whole dichotomy going on, right? But then the transition between middle school and high school kind of starts all over again. But hopefully, you've given your kids tools by now or taken yourself out of their lives enough to allow them to make their own friends and their own mistakes. But again, if you're still one of those parents who is so used to being in control and socially engineering because you yourself need that structure for yourself so that your kids' lives are more predictable, babe, you're still fooling yourself because kids are going to be kids. Life is going to be life. You cannot control everything except yourself. Let me say that again. You can only control yourself. And it's foolish to think otherwise, at least for a sustainable period of time. So, anybody out there right now, ask yourself, are you already preparing to grab the buzz books and make a friend group for your child? Or are you going to be okay with letting your kid go to school and figuring out for him or herself? Just a question that you get to answer. And how are you going to deal with the group that you might have organized blowing up or busting up? And how are you going to deal with your own friend groups shifting and changing because of the ways your children's groups are changing? So again, it comes back to living vicariously through your kids. If you think that's what makes a good mom, you got to think again and get back in touch with who makes you you. Stop defining yourself by what you do or what you have and redefine yourself by who you are for all of the ugly parts of you, for all the amazing parts of you, and for all the parts of you you're leaving open to experience what is to come. Because we don't know, right? That was a lot. And I know I really wasn't so nice, but you can hear it in my voice. That was not an easy time for my kids or for me. It's not an easy time for any parent going through anything like that. How many times have you opened up social media to read someone's story? The lunch table, your kid used to sit at this lunch table and now they're not welcome at it. Or somebody had a party and your child wasn't invited. That happens. That's terrible. It's awful. You can admit that. You can be pissed about it. I would really like to encourage you to have an honest conversation about why wasn't my child included? And if your kid's old enough, to have your child say, how come I wasn't included? And to encourage the answer to be honest in a way that's nice and kind. You got to figure out how to say it nicely. Or I just kind of don't like the same things you like anymore. And maybe the next step would be you're not my person right now, but maybe I know another person who is more into the same things you are, and I'm going to broker that deal, right? We want that in the business world. We want networking. Maybe we can start inspiring our kids to be little networkers for each other with kindness. Like, we all change our minds about likes and dislikes, not just with people, but clothes, music, all the things. So I'm just coming to this now, but would that be possible, you think, to inspire our kids to help their former friends find new friends instead of just cutting them off and never talking to them again? I don't know. Maybe that will become a thing. The other thing I wanted to talk about is what I touched on before. And this came up this morning too. I'm in the Dear Founder Forum, and what a great group of women. And I was at a table with a bunch of women, and I was with some of the younger mommies, and I was having a wonderful conversation about how we define ourselves as parents. And my husband's a physician. I've talked about that. And, we'd go to these hospital events and it would go around the circle. And I've written about this too. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And the conversation would get to me. What do you do? I'm a mom. And I would get summarily dismissed, like sometimes with looks that I was being dismissed. And so I started answering differently. And the next that we went to, somebody said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm the CEO of a major family business." And they said, "Oh, what kind of business? What do you do? What are you in charge of?" I said, "I'm in charge of scheduling, transportation, nutrition, and healthcare." And they would cock their head just like I'm doing. They're like, "Oh my God, what kind of business is that?" I'm like, "I'm a mom." And in my head, I'm like, of course, I wanted to say, "You motherfucker," but I didn't. I would just smile and let them figure out that their question really was loaded with A, expectation that I had a real job, or B, ready to dismiss me because they didn't think that being a mother was a real job. So, everybody out there, take a deep breath. You are a leader if you're a mom. You are a leader if you're a dad. You lead your family. Do not apologize for it. Do not excuse yourself for it. And if you've got the job of parent and a job outside of your home, or you're working from home, bless you too. You are leading differently and in every way possible. But especially if you're a stay at home mom, you're working your ass off. And I know you know it, but I want you to own it and feel empowered to discuss it, or how difficult it can be and challenging it is, also how joyful and amazing and surprising it is, just like any other job. Also, catch yourself if you do make the transition between working for a paycheck and working for no money. Redefine what money is to you and what your self worth is predicated upon. Because if for a long time it was predicated upon getting a paycheck and a pat on the back for a job well done and the completion of a project from beginning to end, you're in for a rude awakening, a big surprise when maybe you step out of the workforce to step into the mom workplace, because it's a never ending job of 24/7. Maybe you will get a pat on the back. It might not come till down the road, and the projects are never ending. So again, talking about myself here, I never knew how type A I really was until I got on that bed rest and until I became a mom. I didn't realize how I had to find myself and my self worth by how much money I was making and how good of a job I was doing at my job. And so everybody who is capable of doing any work at all is capable of doing the work for themselves to enjoy the jobs they're doing in any role they're playing. And there's going to be shitty coworkers, just like there's shitty parents. There's going to be annoying coworkers, just like your kids and your friends can be annoying, and you and yourself can be annoying. And so everywhere we go, that's where we are. That's a great quote, I believe, by John Kabat-Zinn, or the title of his book, "Wherever you go, there you are." So just notice wherever you're going, who are you bringing with you? And when you catch yourself in that carpool line, looking at yourself in the mirror and you recognize or don't recognize yourself, there you are. Give yourself grace and permission to be human. Give yourself grace and permission to experience this cray amazing month of May for all the tears that graduation and the pride that graduation can bring, for all the fears and the tears that come up with navigating transitions of your kids changing schools or changing grades. And let yourself figure out who you are without the labels of mother or spouse or friend, and get clear on what brings you joy inside yourself first and how you allow yourself or don't to experience joy outside of yourself, even when life is difficult, even when you're pedaling, even when you're not allowing yourself to coast. Joy on the Fives, as you know, is a segment I have in the show intentionally to help people remember that joy is a birthright, just like love, and that sometimes it's a muscle we need to exercise just like any other. And we need to practice and get that muscle stronger by making more room for joy throughout our day, even if it's a fleeting moment of looking at yourself in a new way or your child in a new way, or that woman who shit on your kid and now everybody's older and can't we all just get along? And she probably wasn't in her best self either. Um, I can't tell you how many times I've run into former frenemies, let's say, or mean moms. And hey, if I was a mean mom to anybody out there, I apologize. When we are not in our best places inside for any and a variety of reasons, we are really not our best selves outside. And so I can't tell you how many times I've run into people who I witness being just bitches, not even just to me, or not even to me, only to find out they were dealing with an illness or they're going through a divorce or their child was really struggling and people were mean to them or their child, and they didn't have the wherewithal or the patience under stress to show up in a different way. Give everybody grace and let that grace start with yourself. And leave room for repairing and healing, forgiveness, compassion, and gratitude. Parenting really takes us down some very twisty, windy roads where we need to have that compassion, gratitude, forgiveness, and space for magic. I hope this is helpful. I'm really here as an energetic wellness strategist. I'm going to start saying that a little more than consultant or coach. This woman I met a few days ago calls herself a strategist. I really like it because I really hope that I give people strategy on how to navigate the lives they're living, especially women leaders like you moms out there of kids at any age and stage, because we are meant to understand what makes us tick and what ticks us off. And that's my gift. And I do that for people. It's my joy to do that for people, to help them figure themselves out. So please reach out to me. If you're a mom of kids of any age and you've got a group of friends with kids of the same age, and before you go down some potentially difficult, nasty, fearful, and amazing roads, and you want to learn how to understand yourself before life gives you those opportunities, please reach out to me, Lauri at customdesignedwellness.com. And follow me on all the socials, Instagram at Stern Lauri and also at Custom Designed Wellness. And on Facebook, if you could follow Custom Designed Wellness. So happy May. And by the way, this might be another podcast for later. We are starting the month of May off, May 1st, with a full moon and ending the month of May on the 31st with a full moon. So we are going to experience a full moon sandwich in a month where Uranus just went into Gemini for the next 7 years. And there's a lot of energy going on with that. So I'm going to leave you with that. Rock who you are, learn what brings you joy, make no apologies for who you are and what brings you joy, and have an amazing day. And you matter. Thanks for listening.